Facebook as soon as it happens.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus 11th Congressional District Special Election Candidates Forum. My name is Steve Holeko. I'm the political director of the Progressive Caucus. And before we get started, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen after the forum. You are all going to get an email with 3 links. One of the links is going to be to join the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus. And if you are not yet a member and you join tonight, membership is free. You will be eligible to vote in our endorsement vote, which is going to start tomorrow. Those of you who get our weekly newsletter, CCPC News and Events, the first attempt at voting is going to be in that newsletter. Voting is going to go up until April 2nd, and we'll send several emails reminding folks to vote. We want to get as many of our membership and hopefully some new members tonight to vote as possible. The second link, and we always do this at live CCPC events. This is a little bit different with Zoom, is to donate to the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus. We are all volunteer funded, all volunteer staff, and we've been in existence for nearly 5 years because of small contributions from good folks like yourselves. The third link is to our March membership meeting, which is going to occur 1 week from tonight on March 31st. The topic of that meeting is state budget and other state house issues. And our guests for that meeting will be State Senator Nikki J. Antonio, State Representative Mike Skindell, Zach Schiller from Policy Matters, and Mary Bressler from Noble. So without further ado, let me introduce our candidates. And we're going to do this alphabetically because, you know, we don't have a way to do a random drawing on Zoom. They are Cuyahoga County Councilwoman and Cuyahoga County Democratic Party Chair Chantal Brown. Too bad we can't have an applause for each of the candidates. Former State Representative Brian Flannery, former State Senator and former Cleveland City Councilman Jeff Johnson, activist Tariq Shabazz, former State Senator Shirley Smith, and former State Senator and former Our Revolution President Nina Turner. Now, let me explain the format of the forum. We are going to start off with a 2-minute opening statement by each candidate. And then we're going to follow with 8 questions. We originally were going to have 7 questions, but at the last second, former State Representative John Barnes Jr. canceled. So we have time for an extra question, which is good. We'll have 8 questions. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question. And then at the end, we'll have a 1-minute closing statement. Now, because we can't do a random drawing by Zoom, we had to do the initial order alphabetically. But after the opening statement, as we get through the 8 questions and as we get through to the closing statement, the order that the candidates will speak will be in reverse. So in other words, the person who speaks last for the opening statement goes first for the next question, person who spoke first goes second, and so on. And we'll rotate that through the end. So each candidate will have an opportunity to go in the first part of the order and in the last part of the order. Next, I want to introduce our tech person, Deb Klein, who's going to say a little bit about how we're going to do the timing.
Good evening, everyone, and all those that are listening and watching on Facebook. Just a couple of rules. You will have 60 seconds to answer the questions. I will give you a 10-second warning. And then when your minute is up, you get muted. That's one of the beauties of Zoom. So you will be muted when your minute is up. I will, as I said, say 10 seconds and please wrap it up. The other thing is we are broadcasting live on Facebook. So all of you are on the screen right now, and you will be on the screen for the rest of the evening. That's it, Steve.
Okay, to start off opening statements, County Councilwoman Chantelle Brown.
All right, thank you. Good evening. Thank you very much for putting this forum together. For those of you that don't know me, I am Chantelle Brown, chairwoman of the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party and 9-year consecutive legislator, working with some of the most diverse constituents in the district. I represent people from the inner city of Cleveland to the outer ring suburbs of Pepper Pike. So my constituency is very diverse. And right now, I couldn't be more excited about what the Biden-Harris administration is ushering in at historic levels, which are real change that are making a real difference. Everywhere I go, I hear people that are unable to afford some combination of housing, healthcare, education, or childcare. And I couldn't be more excited about this new bill that was recently passed because it provides funding for equitable vaccine distribution and to open schools. It cuts childhood poverty in the United States in half and imposes a moratorium on eviction so people can stay in their homes. This is great news towards COVID relief, but it's also going to take opportunities and direction of change to affect our economy. And I want to be a part of that and make sure that it's working well for Northeast Ohio. Those who have worked with me in local government know that I look to make headway, not headlines. And I am a responsive leader who is attentive to our community. And I am an effective coalition builder using my tools to get legislation passed across the aisle. While I am the chairwoman of the Democratic Party, I have had success working with my Republican counterparts to pass very comprehensive legislation around declaring racism as a public health crisis, which I passed unanimously with bipartisan support. And this wasn't just legislation to make us feel good. It really addresses some of the systemic issues that have had such a disparate effect on the African-American community. So if you elect me to Congress, I will be a partner to advocate for the people of Northeast Ohio and ensuring that Biden and Harris are accountable and can pass an agenda that will improve our communities. So I look forward to a wonderful dialogue.
10 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chantal. Next up, former State Representative Brian Flannery.
Thank you, Steve. And just want to start by saying I'm not a career politician. I have real life experiences in public service in the private sector and serving as a city councilman right here in Lakewood, as a state legislator, which represents this district, part of this district, as a small business owner right here in this district, to a healthcare professional working with labor unions for the past 20 years. And most importantly, I'm most proud of being a husband and a father. And I also want to make sure that everyone understands that constituent services will be my #1 priority. I'm running to be a member of Team Biden. And what that means is not being a rubber stamp for Team Biden, but providing your input and help. And that's what I've done my whole life, being on teams. I'm going to support reauthorizing the Violence Against Women Act. I will support Senator Warren's wealth tax, and it is a great piece of legislation that she's introducing. I'm going to support President Biden's infrastructure legislation, and I'm going to support the Right to Organize Act and the Build Green Act. And I would be remiss if I didn't share with everyone that the Flannerys represent 4 generations of leadership right here in this district. And it all started with my great-grandmother. This is Women's History Month. And my great-grandmother, Margaret Flannery, was the first Flannery elected in the country. And she was elected as a national delegate to the FDR convention statewide. She also served for the Democratic Cosmopolitan League as the chair. And that was a group that was formed similar to this progressive caucus
10 seconds.
because the normal Democratic Party wasn't welcoming. And I'm going to carry that through and represent this district.
Casey.
Next up, former Cleveland City Councilman and former State Senator Jeff Johnson.
Thank you for having me today. It is good to be with the Progressive Caucus again. I am a proud member of this hardworking and determined chapter. We know each other well. Together, we fought in the streets of Cleveland to try to put together on the city ballot a $15 an hour minimum wage. We stood together to protect our children by challenging Cleveland City Hall to pass a law to require the removal of poisonous lead from its 80,000 rental housing units. All of my 30 years in public service, with 23 of those years having the privilege to be an elected official, I have answered the bell for the people who count the most, our citizens who live in our communities. And as a congressman, I will continue to be as committed for all the people living in the 32 municipalities of the 11th Congressional District. Over the years, I have enjoyed working with the public while serving in the 3 branches of local government, as a councilman serving in city council, as a director of community relations serving with former Mayor Jane Campbell, and presently as court administrator for the Cleveland Housing Court. I've been an elected legislator within the 2 levels of government as a state senator and a city councilman, and ready to legislate at the federal level. I will not be the candidate in this race with the most money or the most endorsements, but I am the one most prepared, most ready and able to go to Capitol Hill and hit the ground running from day one. I am an attorney, like the 3 amazing congresspersons previously elected to 11th District. I am experienced in public policy development and implementation, qualified by the classroom with 3 college degrees and by the streets, showing up each day doing the work, most of the time unknown to anyone except the citizens I am assisting. For me, experience and qualifications and a proven commitment to the people and their issues matters more than anything else. Because of that, please support me, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Next up, activist Tariq Shabazz.
Can everyone hear me?
Mhm.
All
Yeah.
right. All right. My name is Tariq Shabazz. I'm a husband, I'm a political scientist, and I'm a Navy veteran. But before I got any of those titles, I say this all the time, I want people to always remember this. I was just a young kid who grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. So I know what it's like. I felt the pain of the gun violence, the violent crime that is real in our streets. The fact that we have seen the economic instability in so many of our communities, the lack of opportunity, the lack of investment, and most importantly, the neglect from our actual governmental leaders. When I was just a young child, I've seen death in the face. And I know this is a clear reflection of what's actually happening within District 11. Although I know so many of my colleagues will say that this is a very diverse district. Yes, it's diverse, but it is very segregated. The wealth is very segregated. The people are struggling, and not just in this district, but throughout the country. And I want everyone to know right now, since I was a kid, I've always felt that fire in me, the aspirations to want to be a public servant. In 2014, I enlisted into the United States Navy. I graduated top of my class. I was a peer tutor. I became a president of an organization representing my second classes within my command. I was a Sailor of the Year. I was nominated for another Sailor of the Year in my second command. I discharged honorably from the Navy. I finished my master's in public policy and a concentration in national security. No one in this race can tell me that Tariq Shabazz is not ready to lead.
10
Because
seconds.
most importantly, what I've learned throughout my entire naval career is that leadership is what you're actually prepared to step up to the plate at any point in time. And that's Tariq Shabazz. Thank you.
Next up, former state senator Shirley Smith.
Good afternoon or good evening to everybody. My name is Shirley Smith. My name is Shirley Smith. My name is Shirley Smith. And I say that because I am so often mistaken for Nina Turner. So if Nina wins, you know it should have been me. So I just want to make sure that people recognize that. But I am a mother. I am a grandmother. I attended Cleveland State University, where I am a graduate. I also attended Harvard University. And I served in the Ohio House of Representatives as well as the Ohio Senate, where I was elected the Assistant Minority Leader. I also served as the president of Ohio Legislative Black Caucus. I was the only Democrat to serve in a chairmanship in the Republican-controlled Senate, in a Republican-controlled Senate. I've become nationally known for the work I've done in criminal justice, so much so that Governor Kasich appointed me to the parole board. I am also an Ohio lobbyist. I have worked in corporate America for a good bit of my life, which I really enjoyed, and I worked for Fortune 500 companies. I am running to bring great representation to this 11th district, making the people first, not politics, but the people first. And I will do this by bringing a job creation, public and private partnerships, and also to protect our natural resources, our lakes, our parks, and our arts. So I want to make sure that folks know that I know that this is about people and nothing else. Thank you.
And next up, former state senator and former Our Revolution president, Nina Turner.
Good evening, and CCPC, it's such a pleasure to be with you. I was with you when you first started this august organization. I feel very much like I am home. I start my remarks by paying my condolences and just having a moment for our sisters and brothers in Georgia and our sisters and brothers in Colorado. What happened in Georgia, anti-Asian hate, and what has happened in Colorado should make all of our hearts ache. And what happens over there happens over here. Or in the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., what happens to one directly happens to us all indirectly. I am running for this seat to continue my service to this great community. I have served this community in various capacities, starting with from the Cleveland City Council, but I worked for Mayor Michael R. White, so I have the administrative experience as well. The Cleveland Municipal School District, a tenured professor at Cuyahoga Community College. I truly understand proximity to pain. I am running to support and to push for policies that lift the least of these, our sisters and brothers. That is the poor, the working poor, and the barely middle class. Bigger than my resume in terms of service to on the professional end is I am someone who has been in the vineyard from the local level all the way to the national level in pushing for Medicare for all, the fight for 15, canceling student debt, dealing with injustice in all of its forms, and standing in the ready position, taking the 11th congressional district everywhere that I've ever gone. This seat and the realities of this moment demand somebody that is going to stand up and speak the truth. I can work with anybody. Working with does not mean acquiescing to.
Thank you, all of the candidates, for some wonderful opening statements. Before we get to the questions, just want to explain something. There are around 200 people registered for this event. That's why you keep hearing the beeps of more folks coming in. And a lot of folks submitted questions. So we couldn't possibly have all of the questions get into the forum. The way we prioritize which questions get asked is, first of all, they have to be a policy question. And second, the topic of the question that was most frequently asked. And I hope the candidates don't mind, but to get this moving as quickly as possible, we're going to stop using your titles and just use your names, when it's your turn. And a note about the first question. This question was by far the most frequently submitted question. Not exactly, but the topic of this question. And this question is very simply, describe your position on climate change. And Nina, since you were last on opening, you get to go first for this question.
Nina, can you unmute? There we go. Whoops. I won't start the timer until you start speaking.
Nina, can you hear me? You're up first for this question.
Deb, I think when I unmuted myself, you muted me again. I was trying to get unmuted.
No worries.
All right. Thank you. Dealing with climate change is one of the most significant things that we can do in this country. Environmental racism is real, and what we have done to damage Mother Earth is real as well, and we must undo that damage. I am a strong and staunch supporter of the Green New Deal, and it's certainly been on the stump over the years in support of that. The Green New Deal will give us an opportunity to bring jobs, to strengthen our labor unions, and at the same time, take care of Mother Earth. And we must do so with a fervency. Scientists have been very clear that if we don't correct this problem, we put Mother Earth in peril and therefore ourselves. We can't do any other great thing in this nation, in this world, without making sure that we have an Earth that is safe and secure and healthy for ourselves and for future generations.
Thank you, Nina. Next up, Chantelle Brown.
Got it?
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. I think first we must follow the science as it relates to the environment. Clearly, we've been educated on the consequences of global warming, and we continue to witness its effects firsthand. I stand with the Biden-Harris administration initiative to deliver an equitable, clean energy future. This includes promoting renewable energy, reducing oil and gas subsidies, and establishing a task force on coal and power plant communities. We also need to hold our corporate polluters accountable when they lead to underlying conditions contributing to higher rates of illnesses, hospitalizations, and deaths. So I support Biden's plan to reverse the excesses of tax cuts for corporations, reducing incentives for tax haven, evasion, and outsourcing.
Thank you, Chantelle. Next up, Brian Flannery.
Go ahead, Brian.
No, thank you. You know, a big percentage of Americans have been brainwashed by the right-wing commitment to deny that there isn't even a climate crisis, and we need to reverse that brainwashing and start in elementary school. Climate change should be mandated part of our curriculum through high school. This planet is going to be inherited by our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and they need to be educated and take responsibility for their world. I also support the Build Green Infrastructure and Jobs Act. That's $500 billion over a 10-year period. That's going to create 1 million jobs. And we need to support those efforts, and we need to do it here in this district, which River caught on fire years ago, and we're making great strides. The 100-year anniversary of our metro parks, the Cuyahoga Valley National Park right here in this district needs support and help.
Thank you, Brian. Next up, Jeff Johnson.
Okay, there we go. Well, first of all, we have to understand that in 2015, when we did the Paris Agreement, we definitely need to get back into that. But there's an international problem of actually reaching our goal in 2050. To be able to get to net zero emissions, we have to do much more. I know we want to do half by 2030. I support the Biden plan. I believe he's aggressive and he's looking to get to the goals of 2050. I also believe that environment and economy are intertwined, that we can build our economy while we improve our environment. Renewable energies, clean energy, solar, wind, we can do it. We also must lead internationally because most of the countries involved in the Paris Agreement are not meeting their needs and they're falling short. So we have to lead in that area too after 4 years of us not leading. So again, it's all about us being able to be worried about the carbon footprint and make sure we have clean energy.
Thank you, Jeff. Next up, Tariq Shabaz.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So my job as the next congressman, I want to be very clear when I say this. Some of these issues that we've had that have been placed upon our earth, the destruction or, in terms of our carbon imprint as a country, we are passing down, we're kicking the can down the road further and further and further. And who's going to have to fix it? It's going to be people like me, young millennials and Generation Z, and then further on and on. We're going to have to be the ones to fix these issues that the people have placed upon us. And I want people to understand something very clearly. What we put into this earth, we will have a long-lasting impact onto it. We're destroying so many of our marine life throughout this world. In America, we are one of the most, we pollute one of the most in terms of the entire world as a country.
10
So
seconds.
please, we have to continue to keep working on those things. I will work with the Biden administration, and I will ensure that as your next congressman, we will be environmentally friendly while creating more renewable jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Tariq. Next up, Shirley Smith.
Okay, there I go. I do, like the others, support clean energy initiatives. I think that's one of the easiest things to do because it saves lives and it saves jobs. But I don't think we can get there by 2030. I think 2050 is where I think we should, what we should aim for. Thank you.
Okay, our next question, we had a lot of people ask us questions about immigration. So please, in 60 seconds or less, describe your position on immigration reform. And we're going to start with Shirley Smith.
Well, my first thought is that immigration is not really our issue. Immigration is an issue of Congress, because that's an issue that should have been solved a long time ago in our Congress. Why it's taken Congress so long to resolve this issue, I don't know. And I think anybody else knows. The infighting in Congress is keeping us from doing what we need to do to resolve this issue. Now, in terms of the Dreamers, I certainly support that. I support the TPS. I think there could be more done in terms of working with the Mexico president and the other country's president, giving them money, funding their money to make sure they do the things they need so we don't have to do it for them.
10 seconds.
Thank you.
And Nina Turner, you're next.
Thank you. We must have a just immigration reform. And, you know, the executive orders that have already been signed by President Biden is certainly a step in the right direction. We have taken too long to get this to this. This has been a problem over administrations and over Congresses, dealing with our DACA, making sure that they have a just transition, which is in process right now. And absolutely dealing with the forces, the push and pull forces that either pull people to this country or push people to this country. There has to be a universal or a universal way of dealing with this and being a leader in the world to make sure that people have environments in their home countries where they can thrive as well. So this is both a domestic issue and an international issue in terms of the positioning that we take in the United States of America, but it must be humane. We need more judges at the border, and we must do this in a very comprehensive way.
Thank you. And then we have Chantelle Brown next.
Thank you. We are a nation of immigrants. And the first thing America needs to do on this issue is stop denigrating immigrants. Trump's treatment was inhumane, kids in cages, and his policies and rhetoric was racist, divisive, and unacceptable. And it was a shame on our country. So we need to bring people out of the shadows. I support a pathway to citizenship for immigrants here. Citizenship comes with rights and responsibilities. And simply put, I will support the DREAM Act. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up, we have Brian Flannery.
There we go. You had actually muted me, so I unmuted myself. But we really first have to understand why there's an immigration crisis. It's because the Trump administration is the one that created that. And they did it on dividing this country and creating an environment of fear and hate. Many Americans don't want immigrants of color admitted to this country, was Trump's rhetoric. People of color will become the majority if we let them keep coming to the US. That's the rhetoric, and that has to change. I, like many, am an American citizen because Flannery's, we left inhumane conditions and prejudice. In fact, in Ireland, the Flannerys were citizens at will, which means they could get shot on the spot if they were chosen. And I read today in our today's world, in the corporate world, and we're all see that we're employees at will. How interesting. So we came here to seek a new life in a land that we believe was a beacon of democracy.
10
So did
seconds.
everyone come? No. Background checks are necessary. Housing potential immigrants in humane and safe and healthy housing while awaiting entrance is mandatory.
Thank you. And next up, we have Jeff Johnson.
Thank you. As Congressperson dealing with the issue of immigration, I'm going to always remember what the promise of the Statue of Liberty is. The problem with immigration right now is too political. We should focus on fair and apply the law fairly to all immigrants. We also have to be tough. We also have to be able to understand that there is going to be times when we can't let certain individuals in unless they go through the same regular process. I believe in a DREAM Act. I believe in a pathway to citizenship. But I believe, again, to get rid of the politics, we have to deal with the children at the border. We have to be able to continue to be compassionate. That's why I believe in Joe Biden and his approach to this. We also have to be able to reflect the fact that we are a country of immigrants for the most part. And so I believe as a congressperson that we must continue, again, to reflect our promise.
10 seconds.
And always be compassionate as we look and decide who comes in and who doesn't.
Thank you. And Tariq Shabaz.
All right, everybody. So as your next congressman, number one, I first want to say to everyone that immigration is a rather complex subject. So firstly, I will support a pathway to citizenship for DACA. Secondly, I do want to highlight in terms of we must actually do a better job if we're going to be the leaders in the global north to mitigate the circumstances that has led towards many individuals fleeing or being displaced from their homelands. It's imperative that we are the leaders that work on that subject. Secondly, sorry about that. Secondly, in terms of in terms of that, so nation building exercises must be what we're actually working towards to improve that and to improve the overall readiness and the status of these nations that have ultimately left towards the people being displaced from their homelands. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question, we also had a lot of similar questions submitted. So we consolidated like the first two to a more simpler ask. And the question is, describe your position on healthcare. And first up, Tariq Shabaz.
All right, so for anybody who hasn't noticed, I'm a tad bit nervous today. So I just want everyone to hear it now. I'm a tad bit nervous. All right, but in terms of healthcare, this is something I'm extremely passionate about because we have far too many people throughout this country that are either uninsured or underinsured. And I remember specifically when the Affordable Care Act was passed, I thought of how great it was that so many individuals had the right to go seek out some coverage in some form or fashion, people who didn't have it prior. But we always have to recognize that something that worked prior or something that worked partially prior, we must still look forward to how we can improve on those things. That is why I, as your next congressman, my office will support Medicare for all. It said the CBO estimated that it could save up to $0.7 trillion within its first year. And this is all still giving the essential services that so many of our Americans know that they need, without having to worry about the financial status tied to your health care. And I, as your next congressman, will fight for you. Thank you.
Next up, Shirley Smith.
Thank you. Let me first say that one of the things I hope for most is that our country began to look at mental health and dental health as serious issues. They are just as much a part of our health as our physical health. We have failed in this, especially dental health. People go to the hospital now or to the dentist. They cannot get dental health. So that's very important. But the other part of that is I do support the ACA. I support it because right now it's working. It is sort of broke, but it's not broken to a point where we can't
10
fix
seconds.
it. And we also need to make sure that we add a public option in that ACA and also raise the eligibility.
Thank you, Shirley. Next up, Nina Turner.
Nina, you should be good. We try it again.
Okay, thank you. This has been very challenging tonight with mute. Support Medicare for all. We commodify healthcare in the United States of America. We are a hegemon nation and we can afford to have Medicare for all. We are the only industrialized nation on the face of the earth that does not have Medicare for all. We also should make sure that the pharmaceutical companies are not able to charge higher prices, drive down pharmaceutical costs. I've been side by side with the National Nurses United on this issue for the last 6 years. Medicare for all is the medically right, just and fair thing to do in the United States of America, and we must do it. No more premiums, no more deductibles, no more co-pays, that everybody in this country has the healthcare that they need to be able to live a life that causes them to thrive. It is a racial justice issue, and it is a women's rights issue. Medicare for all.
Thank you, Nina. Next up, Chantal Brown.
Thank you. Nobody should have to go without health care. I believe we must cover everyone and lower costs, and we have to do that now. It cannot wait. I think a public option is probably the fastest and likeliest way we can cover everyone and lower costs, and it would build on the success of Obamacare. But I would like to go on record and say I would also vote for Medicare for all if it came to the House floor. I also agree we need to lower prescription drug costs. I also strongly believe that we need to address the racial inequities in healthcare. Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from childbirth and pregnancy-related issues than white women. And this is some work that I've been able to do here successfully, and it was the foundation of declaring racism as a public health crisis legislation that I led around working with Birthing Beautiful communities to help address
10
that.
seconds.
So thank you.
Thank you, Chantal. Next up, Brian Flannery.
Yeah, healthcare is a very important issue. It's one of the fastest growing segments in our economy that's driving everything. And it is something that seriously needs to be addressed. It is a huge bureaucracy. And if we go back to the history of how healthcare has been delivered, we had the Hillary plan, and then that led to the Obamacare plan, and the insurance companies were frightened. But what happened? The insurance companies adapted, and they started making mega millions and millions of dollars off of the new system. So when we hear Medicare for all, we really need to be thoughtful about what that means. Does that mean we're giving more money to the insurance companies? We have to be thoughtful, and I actually have a plan and look forward to unveiling it throughout this campaign, where we can provide health care affordable and accessible
10
to
seconds.
everyone right here in this district. We have to do it, and we have to also address the social disparities of health, which is another issue we need to discuss.
Thank you, Brian. Next up, Jeff Johnson.
Here we go. First of all, there is a right to health care that everyone in this country has. It's universal coverage is what I support. I do not support Medicare for all. I would not vote for it if it was before me as your congressperson, because I believe in America, in the Affordable Care Act with a public option. I believe we have to strengthen and fix what the Trump administration did to it. I believe we need to provide choice for the citizens. Those who want and to keep their private insurance coverage, they should be able to do that. I believe we need to do a much more deliberative movement toward universal coverage. Jumping to Medicare for all, I would not support that. I will stand with Biden administration who supports the ACA and a public option, no doubt about it. Our folks need to be able to have choice when it comes to that.
10
And
seconds.
we need to lower prescription drugs and deal with health inequities. Thanks.
Okay, our next question is, and we're going to start off with Jeff Johnson this time. Describe your position on workers' rights. $15 minimum wage, union rights, you decide.
There I go. First of all, I am a child of two union workers. My mother and father were postal workers. I grew up in a union household. I understand the importance of a collective bargaining agreement, of the right to organize. I would have voted for the PRO Act. I believe in the PRO Act. I supported $15 an hour when a lot of people weren't around to do it. I was in the streets with the Progressive Caucus and SEIU, and we fought for to put that on the ballot, but powerful forces in Columbus stopped us. So I am focused on the notion that strengthen the labor laws, and you will improve the ability of working class folks to move to middle class. A strong union environment is a strong economy. I believe in that. I grew up in that, and I will continue to support that. And also, since this is March 24th, we need to close the gap on wages between women and men. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up, we have Tariq Shabazz.
All right. First, I wanted to say something really quickly. For any of my colleagues that don't support Medicare for all, I would advise that they actually read what is in the Medicare for all bill and see that it actually is more beneficial for your constituents, if we're talking about constituency services. Secondly, in relation to the question at hand, I wholeheartedly believe in support for $15 minimum wage. The wage inequality gap has continuously skyrocketed since the Reagan administration, and we can't look past it. We have to admit it, that the fact of the matter is that corporations have been getting more wealthier while the common person is getting more poor, more impoverished. So I will always support in terms of the unions. I will continuously fight for the unions, regardless of what unions or what people who support me or not. I always will support I will support the right to assemble and to unions, and for a fair wage, a living wage. No one person should be working and not be able to take care of their family. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up is Shirley Smith. Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
I too support unions and the right to organize, and I also support the $15 minimum wage. Thank
Anything
you.
else?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
And next up, Nina, we're going to get this right. Nina Turner. You were there and got it.
Okay, all right, we did a little better that time, Deb. Definitely the House of Labor. We know that the wages of even non-union workers are impacted by union workers. I just came back from Birmingham, Alabama, and Bessemer, Alabama, standing side by side with those Amazon workers. We have 3 facilities in the 11th Congressional District. What happens over there happens over here. I also was in that fight against Senate Bill 5. Not only did I vote the right way in the Ohio Senate, got into the streets with folks to collect signatures to turn back the tide of anti-worker in the great state of Ohio. We must strengthen unions. The PRO Act is a great start. People must be able to organize and collectively bargain for their wages. This is about having a high quality of life and making sure that the poor, the working poor, and the barely middle class no longer have to continue to scrape by. People should be able to live a good life, and supporting labor unions is a great start to that.
Thank you. And next up is Chantelle Brown.
Thank you very much. I too am a strong supporter of the PRO Act and would happily vote for that if I'm so honored to become your next congressional representative. I also support a pathway to $15 minimum wage. I think that it's important that we also not only look at just getting to that $15 minimum wage, but that we are on implement a strategy to index it so that we don't find ourselves in the same situation that we're in right now in the future. So those are just a couple of things in addition to creating jobs around building infrastructure, roads, railways and bridges, and addressing our broadband is another way that we can create jobs in our industry, specifically here in Cuyahoga County, where we have results where people weren't able to get access to high quality Wi-Fi because of digital redlining. So I would certainly like to be able to
10
create
seconds.
job opportunities around the installation of broadband as well as roads, bridges, and railways. Thank you.
And we will now go to Brian Flannery.
Yeah, I definitely, in my opening remarks, support the PRO Act, and I also definitely support the $15 minimum wage. That has to be mandatory. And the business I owned right here in this district in Garfield Heights on Broadway and McCracken, we were paying above minimum wage at the time, which that minimum wage hasn't changed since then in 20 some years. It is abominable that people have to work 2, 3, 4 jobs to support their family. So we really need to get to that point. And as far as unions, I've been a union member for 20 years, Local 277, the OPEIU. I've been working with unions and for unions all my adult professional career. In the healthcare field, I've worked with the Taft-Hartley labor trust plans all over the country, and they set the model for what needs to be done, how they negotiate protections and rights on behalf of workers. We need to support it.
10 seconds.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, our next question. Describe your position on the bloated Pentagon budget, specifically how those funds could be used to benefit the residents of the 11th Congressional District more directly. And Brian, you are up first.
Yeah, it's interesting how when the Republicans control everything, they dump a ton of money into the defense spending and totally neglect us here at home. And then when it's our turn, they cry foul. They say, hey, you know, we're deficit hawks. We have to watch where we're spending our money. And because of that, we've suffered from that with our aging infrastructure, with the neglect of addressing climate change and providing those clean energy jobs that we need so badly. So I would definitely be for cutting that defense spending budget and appropriately sending it back here to this district, which, by the way, our district is some of the most impoverished communities in the country. We have East Cleveland, we have pockets in Cleveland, we have pockets in Akron, and it seriously needs to be addressed.
10 seconds. Okay.
Thank you, Brian. Next up, Jeff Johnson.
Got it. Okay. Well, first of all, we clearly understand that the whole military purchasing and the military construction and companies, that there's so much fat in the budget, so we can absolutely cut it. I think Dwight Eisenhower told us to be aware of what that means to our country. I think without a doubt, it should come back to our 11th district to be able to be used for infrastructure, be able to be spent on investing in underutilized communities, to be able to close the wage gap and be able to provide small business support and development. I know that we can have a military that responds to the needs of our people. At the same time, we can reduce the budget and bring it home and be able to invest in the neighborhoods, be able to invest in entrepreneurial spirit, be able to close the income gap and deal with the inequities of structural racism in our community.
Thank you, Jeff. Tariq Shabazz.
Thank you. For anybody who doesn't know, again, yes, I'm a U.S. Navy veteran. So I'm a sailor. So for anybody that doesn't understand a couple things really quickly, we're talking about removing a percentage of funding that's going to our military, right? So what is that going to take? That's going to take somebody like me, a sailor, getting onto that Armed Services Committee actually getting down, putting my big boy boots on, actually getting in there to going over the details about how much dollars that we're appropriating for this, how many dollars we're appropriating for that, what we're going to remove in terms of a reallocation. And then that is what it's going to take. It's going to take someone like me to get in there. I know we have some candidates here that have some star power and whatnot. That's not going to get it done. What's going to get it done is somebody who already knows that they can talk to these people, reach across the aisle. I've reached across the aisle many times while I was in the military, and I can say that for a fact. So what it's going to take, I'm going to support a reduction in the funding from the Department of Defense. And we need to actually incorporate some of these funds to these critical areas we know we need in our communities.
Thank you, Tariq. Next up, Shirley Smith.
Well, I tend to think that it's not only the bloating of our defense budget, but it's also the bloating of our national budget. Because with the bloating of both, what it does is threaten our national security. Because as long as we have the bloating of both budgets, then it affects our workforce, it affects our Social Security, and it also affects our health care. So looking at both budgets, if we don't do something about both, then we're in trouble either way. When you look at China and what China is doing, China has a BRI, a Belt and Roads Initiative, where they're taking their commerce through 65 countries. They have reduced their poverty from 2012 from 99% to 5.5%. So do we want to really decrease our budget? We'd have to talk about it.
Thank you, Shirley. Next up, Nina Turner.
We must be willing to have the courage to get away from the owner donors, and the military industrial complex owns a lot of members in the Congress. We have a $1.3 trillion discretionary budget. And over 50% of that budget, about $720 billion, goes towards the military industrial complex. You know, last year the Congress was faced with, but the House of Representatives, controlled by Democrats, cutting that budget by just 10%, and it failed. And so we need courageous people in that Congress, of which I am one of those people, to cut that budget and reallocate that money towards healthcare, towards education, and towards jobs. Again, we are a hegemon nation, and we can afford to make those kinds of investments in our people domestically. We have a bigger budget than the next 7 to 8 countries combined. We can both protect this country internationally and also invest in it domestically, and cutting the military industrial complex is a great start.
Thank you, Nina. Next up, Chantelle Brown.
Thank you. So I support a reassessment of the priorities of America, and I am certainly open to reducing our military spending, but not only that, our presence abroad. I think we should be prioritizing healthcare, jobs, and justice. We need to invest more money into making sure that our citizens have access to high quality healthcare, making sure that we have high quality jobs where people can have a pathway to prosperity, and justice, training our law enforcement and our crisis intervention and social services network to be able to address some of the issues that have been plaguing our society for so long. Thank you.
Okay, our next question. Again, we got quite a few different questions from different people on this issue. Will you sponsor or support the Lead Safe Housing for Kids Act? And we're going to start off with Chantelle Brown.
Without question, this is some work that we initiated following the lead of the city at the county level, and we've done some of this work at the county level, but it's certainly not enough. And with corporations like Sherwin-Williams right in our backyard, we should be holding them accountable and doing public-private partnerships to make sure that we address this lead issue here locally. But I certainly would be a strong voice on the congressional level if the people of Summit County and Akron would bless me with the opportunity to represent them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Brian Flattery.
Yeah, I would definitely support that for sure. I think when we talk about lead paint and housing. People talk about redevelopment and what I will certainly make sure that we don't displace folks like we have been doing in these redevelopments where we build homes that people can't afford to live in. So we can address that by one, taking care of the basics and taking care of these lead abatement programs and making sure that we don't displace the people that live in those communities and force them with nowhere to go. So that's my view on that. I think it's one piece of the social disparities of health that really need to be addressed in this district.
Thank you. Next up is Jeff Johnson.
I stood with Clash when we focused in on, I stood with Clash and the political caucus, the Progressive Caucus. And we're the ones who stepped out first to be able to tell City of Cleveland that the children in our cities are being poisoned. It was my piece of legislation that I'd introduced to City Council that they would not pass while I was there, and they passed 80% of it after I left. I have been in the streets focused on this social problem. And yes, I would support federal legislation. I believe we have to get rid of the poison lead within our, not only our community in Cleveland, but the entire 11th district, because some suburbs have the problem as well as Greater Akron. So I'm committed to it. I fought in the streets with the Progressive Caucus, and we won that victory, even though others are taking credit for
10
it.
seconds.
And I am proud of what we did together.
Thank you, Jeff. Next up is Tariq Shabazz.
All right, so I wanted to first to say that 100% that Tariq Shabazz in my office, we will completely support any act in relation to lead safe initiatives. Number one, I grew up in this district not too long ago, and I didn't grow up with I wasn't grow up with being affluent or grew up in a lower socioeconomic status community, so that so many people within this district know exactly what I'm talking about. And before it became rather a more popular subject to even talk about or entertain through this district, talking about the lead that's in the actual areas, I grew up in it. So I want people to understand that, so that I will always be an advocate, and I will work extremely hard, and my office will fight tooth and nail to ensure that we pass legislation that actually makes a better and more safe district and a more safe country that removes the amount of harmful lead throughout this country. Thank you.
And next up, we have Shirley Smith.
Yes, I would very much support that initiative. But what I do feel is that these conversations have been going on far too long, far too long. Lead poisoning and infant mortality, these issues are almost, it's almost mind-boggling to think that we have offices downtown and people in those offices who get paid to do this work and have not resolved these issues. I know that Jeff Johnson did a great job on his advocating for this issue, and all that work was counted, and he was accounted for, and he did what he was supposed to do. However, there are some people in positions that have not done what they're supposed to do, and all we keep doing is talking about it. So yeah, I do support that initiative to get rid of lead poisoning that's been going on for over 100 years.
10 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Nina Turner.
Yes.
You're good.
Yes.
Nina,
I
the
support.
question. Oh,
Yes.
oh, that's all you're
Yes.
going to say. Okay. you
Yes.
got
I
it.
mean, the question was, would you support the legislation? The answer is yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Next question. It's a little long, so listen carefully and I'll be glad to repeat. There are 5 more major pieces of legislation that the Biden administration needs passed. They deal with voting rights, immigration reform, infrastructure, healthcare, and climate change. Please prioritize these issues from 1 to 5 in order 1 being the most important, 5 being the least important. They are, once again, voting rights, immigration reform, infrastructure, healthcare, and climate change. And Nina Turner is up first.
I drew the short straw on that one. Geez, I mean, they are all important. I don't know how we prioritize these things. I mean, they all are important. I mean, voting rights, immigration reform, infrastructure, healthcare. I mean, if I was forced to prioritize, I could say very clearly climate change or climate chaos, absolutely, because we can't do any other great thing. We can't fight, have infrastructure dollars, healthcare, immigration reform, or voting rights if we don't have Mother Earth healthy for us to be able to navigate her and do all of this great work. So I can't prioritize those in a numerical way, the way the questioner is asking, because each and every one of them are important, and all of these areas deserve our undivided attention to make sure that we have the type of democracy or the the republic that the people in this nation deserve. But the one that I said I wasn't, but the one that I can is definitely dealing with climate chaos, because Mother Earth must be healthy for us to be champions.
10 seconds. You got it?
Thank
Yes.
you, Nina. Next up, Chantelle Brown.
Quite easily the most unfair and hardest question of the night. So it's like asking what's the most important part of the car, the steering wheel, the tire, or the engine. You need them all to make the world go round, right? So if I had to, I'm going to say yes. If we don't have an earth, then nothing else matters, right? And if we don't have a healthy society, then the other 3 won't matter. So I'm going to say climate change, healthcare, and then voting rights, because after healthy people, we need a society that can vote, and those people will decide on our policies around infrastructure and immigration. So I guess that's my priorities: climate change, healthcare, voting rights, infrastructure, and immigration here for the 11th
10 seconds.
district.
Thank you, Chantel. Next up, Brian Flannery.
Yeah, my number 1 would be infrastructure, because that's really the key for jobs. Number 2 would be healthcare, because that takes up such a big portion of our economy. Number 3 would be the voting rights. Number 4 would be the climate change. And number 5 would be immigration reform.
Thank you, Brian. Next up, Jeff Johnson.
The way I'm looking at it, I would say 1A is healthcare. We need to make sure our people right now get the coverage and deal with their health issues. We have so many significant health inequities where people are dying too soon, and we have to take care of healthcare. Voting rights, HR 1, HR 4 will be number 2, because our democracy is at risk here. Climate change, infrastructure, immigration. The overlay of all of that is none of this works unless we get rid of the filibuster in the US Senate. So that's an overlay of all these issues, because it's only talk until we can get the filibuster out of the way. But without a doubt, these inequities in our society, the structural racism that underlie our health and the need for us to have a healthier society, for me is 1A. And of course, democracy is an issue. The John Lewis
10
law
seconds.
and being able to go against what the Republicans are doing across the country.
Thank you, Jeff. Next up, Tariq Shabazz.
All right, I'm going to say, just like some of my other colleagues, this is a rather tough question. It was more complex, and it's very difficult for me to actually put it into a certain sequence. Also, I would add that I believe there's more major pieces of legislation that needs to be passed in this General Assembly under President Biden. One of which specifically is ending the prison pipeline. We have America's 5% of the world's total population, yet it's 25% of the world's prison population. We need to do a much better job in stopping the privatized prison industries from gaining billions of dollars annually a year. Secondly, I would also talk about homelessness. We can fundamentally shape and make this country a much better nation and actually be the leaders of throughout this world to show what we can do to combat homelessness throughout this country. And another one, a huge big one, which I will be an advocate for, is reparations. And I'm making a pledge right now. And I'm asking every candidate, will you make a pledge that you will be a leading advocate for reparations out of District 11? Thank you.
Thank you, Tariq. And next up, Shirley Smith.
It would be very difficult for me to prioritize these things because it's just hard for me to believe that we can't walk and chew gum at the same time. I mean, as many people that we have in Congress, why can't we resolve these issues? You know, but if I had to prioritize, I mean, if I really had to, which I don't want to, I sort of feel like Nina. I mean, it's all important. I mean, we all kind of intersect together, the healthcare, the immigration, all of it. But if I had to, I would do healthcare, number one. Number two would be infrastructure. Number three would be climate change, and then HR1, and then immigration. Thank you, sorry.
Thank you. Okay, we have another longer question. So are you ready? It's not just a short one here. Please support the We the People Amendment, HJR 48, a proposed constitutional amendment to end all corporate constitutional rights or corporate personhood, and the doctrine that political money in elections equals free speech. And we're going to start with Shirley Smith. Unmute, Shirley.
Okay. Would
There
you
you go.
repeat that, please? Because if it's what I think you're asking, no, I do not support dark money in politics, if that's what you're asking.
So I will repeat the question one more time. Will you support the We the People Amendment, HJR 48, a proposed constitutional amendment to end all corporate constitutional rights, corporate personhood, and the doctrine that political money in elections equals free speech?
No, I don't think it equals free speech. No, I don't. I think there should be a limit. I think there should be campaign reform. So no, I don't.
Okay. Next up, we have Nina Turner.
Amen to that, what Shirley said. We must get corporate money out of politics. Is not free speech, and far too often, because of Citizens United and other pieces of policy, we have given more weight to people who have the most money. They get the most speech, and they just flat out buying elected officials, not just in the Congress, but all across this country. I support campaign finance reform. That is one of the reasons why my campaign is a people power campaign, mainly by small dollar donations, that $27. It is important that the people have impact. The everyday people among the poor, the working poor, and the barely middle class should have impact. Most of the laws that are passed in this country are not necessarily coming from those everyday people. They're coming from the people who have the biggest lobbyists spending billions of dollars in the lobby. So no, corporation and corporate money should not be speech.
Thank you. And next up is Chantelle Brown.
Thank you. So I too support initiatives to get corporate money out of politics, overturning Citizens United, and banning members of Congress from becoming lobbyists. In Congress, I will champion for the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which expands voting rights, limits gerrymandering, creates new ethics rules, and reduces the role of money in politics. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Brian Flannery. Brian?
Yeah, and my answer is yes. I'm definitely supporting of getting rid of dark money and Citizens United.
Okay. Next up is Jeff Johnson.
Thank you. Citizens United ushered in a period that has been so damaging to our democracy. So I will vote and support, sponsor, co-sponsor everything to and get rid of the results of Citizen United decision. We have to get the dark money out of there. You have to get corporate money out of politics. That is not free speech. It is undermine our democracy, and it is the reason why we also in Washington continue to have the extremists running the Republican Party and on that side of the aisle. So committed to doing that and committing to having the people's voice be the voice that we hear, and not the rich and powerful corporations.
Thank you. And Tariq Shabazz.
All right. Well, firstly, I'd like to say that 100% I support an amendment that actually strikes down the decision from the Citizens United case. The interest groups have far too much influence over our federal government right now, and it's continuing to fester and permeate, and it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. We're creating conditions like, for instance, that I talked about before with the prison pipeline. I'm addressing that right now specifically again. How much money can these companies, these corporations, they influence and lobby in terms of our government to change the fundamental shape of how our prison and rehabilitation systems actually are supposed to work? It's more so about the occupancy rating versus the actual ability to actually treat and correct the behavior that led to some of these individuals within the facilities. So 100%. Tariq Shabazz as your next congressman, I will support that amendment. We need to get too much money out of politics. It's far too much. Thank you.
All right, and thank you all for answering those questions. Now we're towards the end. 1 minute closing statement, and we'll start off with Tariq Shabazz.
All right, everybody. Again, this is Tariq Shabazz. Listen, I'm running for United States House of Representatives for the 11th Congressional District of Ohio. Check us out at ShabazForCongress.com. Please vote for Tariq Shabazz on August 3rd. And the reason why is very simple. I am the only candidate in this race that did not feel compelled to jump in this race once it became a vacated seat. Where were all the other candidates in the 2020 primaries? I know where one candidate was. His name is Tariq Shabazz, and I talked about Medicare for all. I talked about reparations. I talked about equity. I talked about all these things. So now we see all of these candidates, and now they want to jump into this race because they see the opportunity. And I'll tell you what, just in the words of Barack Obama, what he said, if you have a problem, you see something going wrong with your political leaders, you pick up that clipboard. And what did Tariq Shabazz do? He picked up that clipboard. And that's what we're going to continue to do. Young people, it is our time. This is our moment. We need to fight. We need to rise up, and we need to actually make and bring a change for the people throughout this country. And most importantly, the people throughout this district. I will be your megaphone to amplify your voices throughout Capitol Hill. So thank you.
Thank you, Tariq. Next up, Shirley Smith.
I'd just like to give thanks to all of you that has given us a chance to talk about ourselves, our races, and what our plans are for this 11th district. It means a lot to me because I think that you are being fair in what you're doing and how you're doing it. At least you're giving us a chance to talk about our issues and the way we feel about them, and saying, okay, well, these people have ideas and they have substance. So we want to hear about them so the voters can make an informed decision. I do appreciate that. So I'm not going to say any more except that my website is ShirleySmithForCongress.com. Feel free to donate. I want to catch up with Nina. So please do that by all means. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Nina Turner.
Oh, my colleague keeps me laughing. Thank you, CCPC, for having us tonight. What the people want is very simple. They want an America as good as it's promised. The great Congresswoman Barbara Jordan said that, and that is why I am running to bring to bear all of the experiences that I've had, both lived and professional, to create an America as good as its promise. Medicare for All is about creating America as good as its promise. Canceling student debt, creating America as good as its promise. Green New Deal, an America as good as its promise. Eradicating racism and anti-Blackness and anti-Semitism, creating an America as good as its promise. Reforming a justice system that is unjust to too many Black and brown and poor folks. I am running to serve you, the 11th Congressional District, and you will be my only special interest. I can work with anybody, but working with is not acquiescent to. My first
10
goal
seconds.
and my first priority are the people of the great 11th Congressional District. What the people want is very simple. They want an America as good as its promise.
Thank you, Nina. Next up, Chantal Brown.
Thank you, CCPC, for this wonderful event tonight. Thank you for the privilege of sharing our ideas, our philosophies, our policies, our ideologies. It's been a wonderful experience. I just want people to remember Chantelle Brown. I've been in the trenches working side by side in this community for 9 consecutive years as a legislator, 3 years as a city councilwoman, 6 years as a county council representative, and 3 years as a leader of the largest Cuyahoga County Democratic Party, the largest of the 88 county parties in this state. And I would also say one of the most complicated. But in that work, we've been able to create many successes for our community. So I am humbly, but with bold expectations, asking for your continued support, because we need somebody who is prepared to do the job on day one. And as the only person who has had legislative experience during this pandemic, I am that person that's ready to do the job on day one. So remember,
10
Chantelle,
seconds.
you can check me out on my website and follow me on my social media, chantellebrown.com, for more information. Thank you very much, CCPC.
Thank you, Chantal. Next up, Brian Flannery.
To my colleagues and those watching on Zoom, we have a huge challenge facing our country and our party. One of us will become the next Congress member from this district. That person will be sworn in after November's general election, 7.5 months from now. Tonight and during the coming months, we'll be communicating to potential voters our issues and priorities. But let me be blunt. None of our ideas, none of the legislation we propose, none of the bills we may vote for will become law unless the Senate gets rid of the filibuster. We need to support and campaign for this seat, but we also need to support Senator Shirley Brown
10
and
seconds.
his Democratic colleagues to end the filibuster now. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And next up, Jeff Johnson.
Thank you again for sponsoring this forum. I ask for the support of the Progressive Caucus and its members. I ask for the support and the vote of the citizens watching this forum. The challenges before us are real and difficult, but we can overcome them together. I know the issues. I understand how to bring solutions. My career has shown that. I'm ready to serve you with a strong, impactful public policy initiatives, and I will be there for you for constituent services. For me, expectations and qualifications and a proven commitment to the people and their issues matters more than anything else. I believe it matters more to the voters as well. Please go to jeffjohnsonforcongress.com to learn more about me and how to support me. Thank you again.
And thank all of you candidates for this wonderful candidates forum this evening. I wish we were in a big hall, because then we could all stand up and give them a thunderous round of applause, but let's kind of do it like this, if that's okay. And also want to thank the folks who submitted questions and the folks who logged on to Zoom or maybe watching on Facebook Live tonight. We're going to send out an email in a few minutes, and the email we send out is going to have 3 links in it. One is to become a member of the Progressive Caucus. If you are not yet a member of the Progressive Caucus, membership is free. And if you join tonight, you can participate on our 11th Congressional District endorsement vote. In our newsletter tomorrow, CCPC News and Events, you're going to see a link to the ballot. Also, we are all volunteer funded, all volunteer staff. And you know, when we're live, we take small donations from good folks like you. There's going to be a donate link in the email if you can give us a little bit of money. We just started our Keep Progressing in 2021 fundraiser. That would be greatly appreciated. And the last link in the email is going to be to our March membership meeting, which is going to be 1 week from tonight. And it's going to be on state budget and other state issues. So we'd like to see you all at that meeting again next week. So again, thank you, candidates. Thank you, participants. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.